Hey everybody, I'm Holly, aka the ScientoloGeek, and welcome to the 37th episode of Going Over the Data series. Now, today we're going to be covering two new policy letters that are not additions to the previous ones like we did in Data Series 36. Today we're going to cover two new outpoints, as well as we're going to go over part of a policy called situation finding. So we learn about reasonableness and why it's a bad thing. For those of you who don't know, I have taken up Mark Headley's birthday game challenge, which means I want to get my subscriber count as high as possible by March 13th, which is L. Ron Hubbard's birthday and the day of the birthday game event. So do what you can, like, comment, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, and just get this awareness out so people can understand what Scientology really has to offer in their stuff. I'm not saying go to the church. I'm never saying go to the church. Don't go to the church. But at least give people an informed idea of what they're doing, so God forbid they ever talk to a Scientologist, they don't look like a bunch of crackpots. Anyway, without further ado, let's get started. So we are at the HCO policy letter of the 30th of September, 1973, issue 1. This is called Outpoints. More.
I recently surveyed a number of possible new outpoints. Almost all of them were simply the basic outpoints in a different guise and needed no special category. However, two new outpoints did emerge that are in addition to the basic number. The new outpoints are added time. In this outpoint, we have the reverse of drop time. In added time, we have, as the most common example, something taking longer than it possibly could. To this degree, it's a version of conflicting data. Something takes 3 weeks to do, but it's reported as taking 6 months. But added time must be called to attention as an outpoint in its own right, for there's a tendency to be reasonable about it and not see that it is an outpoint in itself.
And here we see again that reasonable is not a good thing in Scientology.
In its most severe sense, added time becomes a very serious outpoint when, for example, 2 or more events occur at the same moment involving, let's say, the same person who could have not experienced both. Time had to be added to the physical universe for the data to be true. Like this, I left for Saigon at midnight on April 21st, 1962, by ship from San Francisco. I took over my duties at Saigon on April 30th, 1962. Here we have to add time to the physical universe for both events to occur, as a ship would take 2 or 3 weeks to get from San Francisco to Saigon. Another instance, a true occurrence and better example of added time, happened when I once sent a checklist of actions it would take a month to complete to a junior executive and received compliance in full in the next return mail. The checklist was in her hands only 1 day. She would have had to add 29 days to the physical universe for the compliance report to be true. This is also drop time on her part. Added inapplicable data. Just plain added data does not necessarily constitute an outpoint. It may be someone being thorough, but when the data is in no way applicable to the scene or situation and is added, it's a definite outpoint. Example, long reams of data on an eval write-up, none of which is given any clue to the outpoints on the scene. By actual survey, it was found that the person doing it did not know any why, not having used outpoints to find it, and was just stalling. Often added data is put there to cover up neglect of duty or mask a real situation. It certainly means the person is obscuring something. Usually, added data also contains other types of outpoints, like wrong target or added time. In using this outpoint, be very sure you also understand the word inapplicable and see that it's only an outpoint if the data itself does not apply to the subject at hand. There's more about another already named outpoint. Wrong source. This is the opposite direction from wrong target.
I think we already went over this, so why do you need to state more about it?
An example would be a president of the United States in 1973 using the opinions and congratulations of Soviet leaders to make his point with American voters. A more common version of this, not unknown in intelligence reporting grading for probability, would be a farmer in Iowa reporting a Mexican battleship on Mud Creek. The farmer would be a wrong source for accurate naval reports. A private taking an order from a sergeant that countermands an order he had from a lieutenant would be an example of wrong source. What is sometimes called a "Hey You" organization is one that takes orders from anyone, a repeating outpoint of wrong source. There are many examples of this outpoint. It must be included as a very important outpoint on its own. It produces a chaos of illogical ideas and actions when present. Plus points. Correct time, or the expected time period, is a plus point. Adequate data is a plus point. Applicable data is a plus point. And correct source is a plus point.
So let us immediately get started with the HCO policy letter of the 30th of September 1973, issue 2, called Situation Finding.
There's an iron-bound rule in handling things. Where you find outpoints, you will there also find a situation. If several outpoints come to view in any scene, or even one, if you look further, you will find a situation. There's not any real art to finding situations if you can see outpoints. The sequence is simple. 1, you see some outpoints in a scene. 2, you investigate and pull a few strings, meaning follow down a chain of outpoints. And 3, you will find a situation. And 4, then you can evaluate. Statistics are leaders in pointing that way. They should be X, they are not X. That's conflicting data. Behind that, you will find a situation. If anyone has any trouble finding situations, then one of 3 things is true. A, he cannot recognize outpoints when he sees them. B, he does not have any concept of the ideal scene or wanted. Or C, he does not know how to pull strings, which is to say ask for or look for data.
Again, or it's just because there's no situation and your data series is crap.
On the positive side, to find situations, one has to A, be able to recognize outpoints, B, has to have some idea of an ideal scene and want it, and C, has to be able to pull strings. Evaluation is very much simpler when you realize that the art lies in finding situations. To then find a why is of course only a matter of counting outpoints, and recognizing what that can be handled is retarding the achievement of a more ideal scene. Reasonableness.
Oh, here we go. We learn about reasonableness.
One often wonders why people are so reasonable about intolerable and illogical situations. The answer is very simple. They cannot recognize outpoints when they see them, and so try to make everything seem logical. The ability to actually see an outpoint for what it is in itself is an ability to attain some peace of mind. For one can realize it is what it is, an outpoint. It's not a matter for human emotion and reaction, it's a pointer toward a situation. The moment you can see this, you will be able to handle life a lot better. The human reaction is to react to an outpoint, and then get reasonable and adopt some explanation for it, usually untrue. You can safely say that being reasonable is a symptom of being unable to recognize outpoints for what they are and use them to discover actual situations.
So we will end off at native think, and we'll pick up on it in the next video. So we've covered 2 new outpoints. We've got added time, which is, say for example, something taking longer than it should, or maybe a report saying something will take longer than it actually does. We've got added inapplicable data, which is data that's included, but it's not related to the topic at hand or the data set, so something kind of irrelevant. We also went over wrong source. So instead of just being about an inaccurate source of information, it could also be about getting contradictory sets of orders. So one from a lieutenant and one from a sergeant, for example, that he gave. I know it's not technically the same thing, but it kind of reminds me about bypassing when it comes to the way Scientology organizations are run, especially when missions come in through CMO and COR members then give orders to Class 5 staff that are contradictory maybe to what the Class 5 higher-ups gave to those same staff. So it just kind of makes me think of bypassing in danger conditions. We've also covered 4 plus points: correct time, adequate data, applicable data, and correct source. It was a little bit to go through, but overall it was pretty easy to pick up. So I want to thank all you guys for watching, sticking around, and I will talk to all of you later. See ya.